A stretch of relatively active severe weather is soon going to be sweeping across portions of the Central Plains, the Midwest, and Dixie Alley. In addition to this, a large tropical threat is starting to develop in portions of the Gulf and the Caribbean Sea, and in this video we're going to be breaking down everything that you need to know about those threats. So let's go ahead and get right into it, starting off with the Storm Prediction Center outlook for today, where we have a slight risk of severe weather extending from portions of northwestern Iowa back into the Texas Panhandle. This slight risk of severe weather here is driven by a damaging wind risk. Now, we do have a small hatched indicator in portions of Kansas still, indicating that we could have the threat for a couple of significant wind gusts of hurricane force. So if you're in this area, make sure that you do have a plan in place and you know where you're going to go if you do end up seeing some of those destructive wind gusts. This is also driven by a 15% hatched hail risk for portions of the Central Plains. Now, we do have a 2% tornado probability that remains in effect for sections of Nebraska, and there is actually a pretty decent environment in play across sections, especially of western Nebraska and northeast Colorado. And we actually did see a tornado just before we began the recording here in portions of northeastern Colorado that was quite strong. So if you are here in this area, make sure you do have a tornado action plan in place. Again, for the rest of the night, the threat remains relatively low, but it's still something that you can't completely ignore. Now, as we go into tomorrow, I think that the threat for any sort of tornado potential is going to increase as we have a large slight risk of severe weather that goes all the way from southern Wisconsin back into central Texas. Now, there's only a 2% tornado probability as of right now, but I would not be shocked to see a small 5% probability get added somewhere in the mid-Mississippi River Valley, and we'll talk about why here in just a moment. But before we do, I do want to take a look at our damaging wind probabilities. Again, large 15% risk that goes all the way from areas just south of Janesville, Wisconsin, back into portions of central Texas near the Austin area. Now, the hail threat for tomorrow does exist, but it's mainly going to be localized across portions of the Southern Plains, as that's where our lapse rates remain the most impressive. But other than that, pretty calm tomorrow. Wednesday looks to be somewhat interesting for portions of the Ohio River Valley here. Perhaps some isolated damaging wind gusts and a very, very low-end tornado threat exists if any cell mergers do manage to pop up. But I think that this is mainly going to be isolated to small hail and gusty winds. And as we go into Thursday, we're actually going to be talking about the threat for something a little bit more significant. We do have a day 4 slight risk of severe weather that goes from parts of southwest Kansas back into the Texas Panhandle, and this looks like it could potentially be our next tornado outbreak. Now, going into the HRRR model here, this is a sounding taken for Tuesday's event, tomorrow's event, from portions of northeastern Missouri, right up along the Mississippi River Valley there at 21Z. This would be here at, I believe, about 4 p.m., if I'm not mistaken. And this is actually a pretty impressive sounding. Again, you've got 88.3 CAPE here in the vicinity. We've got 2,200 joules per kilogram of surface CAPE in general. Our SRH values are sitting between 200 and 300. Our wind shear could be a little bit more impressive, but it's still decent. It's sitting at about 40 knots. Our temperature to dew point spread, very impressive, 72 to 78 degrees, and nice storm slinky turned at 77 degrees. Our effective layer STP is quite low, and that is likely just due to the fact that we do have those lower wind shear and lapse rate values. Our hodograph definitely could be a little bit more impressive. Again, the wind profile, obviously not the best. Taking a look at the SARS analogs, which aren't always super reliable, but do sometimes get a good picture of what has happened in setups like this in previous events, you can see that we could potentially see the threat of a couple of significant supercells dropping some big hailstones, damaging wind gusts, and maybe even, yes, a brief isolated tornado or two. Now, the event that I said I was more concerned about, again, our event on Thursday. This is a sounding taken from the NAM model on hour 78. This will be, again, for Thursday's event, this would be in the nighttime hours here. This would be at around 8 p.m. This is actually an impressive sounding, okay? If we take a look firstly at our surface-based CAPE values, again, we're at 4,400 joules per kilogram. Absolutely incredible instability. 172 of that CAPE coming within the first 3 kilometers of the atmosphere. Lapse rate sitting at 7 Celsius per kilometer, so the threat for large to very large hail certainly could exist. Our wind shear values are quite absurd as well. Taking a look at the effective layer, we've got 50 knots of wind shear and 72 knots of wind shear at the cloud layer here. Our storm slinky, absolutely beautiful, turned at 76 degrees. photographed somewhat wonky towards the end, but I think that it is still pretty impressive overall. Again, this is a setup that actually could potentially bring us the threat for a couple of strong tornadoes, and I would not be shocked if this was a 10% hatch tornado probability by day one. Again, this is taken from the eastern section of the Texas Panhandle, the area where we believe the greatest tornado threat exists for the event as of right now. I think as the HRRR comes in on this event, we'll start to see even more and more impressive soundings come in from this area, and I really do think that this is something that we are going to have to watch out for. So again, don't be scared, be prepared, and make sure that you have multiple ways to receive alerts and a tornado action plan in place. We will almost certainly be live at least during the evening time hours of Thursday here. So, before we end off this video, I do quickly want to take a look at our brewing threat in portions of the tropics. This is the 18Z run of the GFS model here. You'll notice that it is showing a 986 millibar low pressure system developing there near the Lesser Antilles, moving into the Gulf of America, Mexico, whatever you want to call it. I genuinely don't care. I call it the Gulf of Craziness over the next few months, but we're expecting a landfall if this run of the GFS were to come true across portions of southeastern Louisiana. Now, you have to keep in mind, this is 250 to 300 hours out on one random run of the GFS model. By itself, we wouldn't even be looking at it because we would just consider this an outlier model. But you have to understand the consistency for this has definitely been there over the past several days. Looking at the 12Z run of the GFS, the previous run, you'll notice that it's a very similar scenario, but a little bit further west and a little bit of a weaker system. Again, there are going to be so many variances in the different runs of the models here over the next several weeks as we try to hone in on this event and see what ends up happening. Again, there's a chance that a tropical system doesn't even end up developing. So take this all with a grain of salt, but again, just taking a look at the past runs, I'm just going through the GFS here. You'll notice that the signal has been extremely consistent for it, which is somewhat concerning, especially since we're getting to the time of year where it is somewhat realistic for us to potentially start to see a tropical threat develop in this area. I do personally think that we are going to end up seeing a slightly above average hurricane season. I don't think that it's going to be too far above average. I definitely don't think it's going to be anything like 2024's, but that's a whole subject for a different video. So one last time before we end off this video here, I do want to quickly thank all of our channel members. You guys are what really helps keep this channel running. You guys are incredible, and I can't thank you enough. God bless all you guys. Again, if you do want to become a member, make sure to do so by clicking a link down in the description. It's as little as $4.99 a month. You get access to frequent exclusive content, early access to certain videos, shoutouts at the end of every forecast, custom stickers to use in stream chats, and more. But yeah, that's about all I've got for you guys today. So again, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Stay safe. Welcome to Minecraft Weather Life.